translated the Pledge of Allegiance into Arabic and recited it for the student body.
They are a club, about 30 members strong, who went to Principal Tom Lopez and asked him if they could read the pledge in languages they know best.
They had to go through me for approval, and I reviewed it pretty carefully.
First, members read the pledge in French, then Spanish, and on Monday, Arabic.
This definitely sparked discussion.
And threats in the form of phone messages from parents.
This is my second call back to you.
Phone messages that Lopez busied himself answering on Tuesday afternoon.
I guess I'm getting worn down a little bit by how intense their sense of hate has been represented in some of the things that they've written and said.
But the feedback
Just a quick note to counteract any hate calls.
has also been positive.
Language is one of those differences to be embraced.
Lopez says Rocky is a place of inclusion, where one message can be communicated in many different ways.
When they pledge allegiance to United States, that's exactly what they're saying. They're just using another language as their vehicle.
From Fort Collins, Nick McGurk, 9 News.
The principal says that group will have other chances to recite the pledge in other languages, but they're going with English next time. You're welcome to join the now healthy discussion about this story on our Facebook page in the language of your choice.
They're going to keep saying the pledge, but what language are they going to say it in? English.
So they only had a problem when it was in Arabic.
Right. Why didn't they have a problem with Spanish or French? Great
Because we
question.
really don't like the...
Well, there's only 2 Arabic countries that we don't like right now, that we're at war with.
It's a great question. So, as you're starting to think about some of these questions, some of the values that we associate with the pledge, I'd love it if you would look at your sheet that I just passed, or that Dom just passed out to you guys. The first half is an article explaining some of the statutes or laws in Colorado about what Colorado thinks about the pledge in schools. So you'll see in 2003 they passed a law and then they repealed it. So after you read this article, just using this as a resource, as a way to get your brain going, as a way to get those wheels turning, I would love for you to then write on the back of your paper your response to that question. Do you believe students at Arvada High School should recite the pledge on a daily basis? Why or why not? And you'll see the directions for that on the bottom of the sheet. So just flip your paper over when you're done reading that article and free write. So just keep writing. We're only going to do it for about 5 minutes. So anything that comes to your mind. Yes, I believe that all students should say the Pledge of Allegiance because I believe it shows pride in our country. Or no, I don't believe that students should say the Pledge of Allegiance because not all students believe in the same values. So go ahead and start. Yeah, John.
This may sound really rude right now, but I mean,
You don't care for the pledge?
no, I'm saying like, oh, this sounds so rude. But
No. Just what do you,
what was like,
like what if you don't care either way?
yeah, what do you care either
If
way?
you don't care either way, what I would write is why you think some people would care about it and why you think some people wouldn't care to say the pledge. And then say why you're apathetic. Like maybe you've grown up in, I don't know, just in a generation that feels like we're very distant from the government, that we're distant from the country. That could be a reason. But I just want you guys to think about anything that comes to your mind when you think about the pledge and why you think students here at Arvada High School should have to say it on a daily basis. All right. So I'll let you have a few minutes to read the first part, the article that just talks about the laws in Colorado, to get your brain going, and then I'll tell you when to start the free time, or the free writing time. Just quick write, brain dump, whatever you want to call it, for 5 minutes. All right. We are talking about the Pledge of Allegiance and trying to answer this question. Do you believe students at Arvada High School should recite the pledge on a daily basis? Why or why not? Mostly because they might actually ask students to say the pledge every day here. So this is just an article that's going to help you start brainstorming what Colorado thinks about having students say the pledge. So read that first, and then in a few minutes, I'm going to turn over the paper and just write down your answer to this question. Do you believe it, and why? You guys will turn in your free write, but I'm not going to be grading it for content. I just want you to be able to write anything that comes to mind. So put your name on your paper at some point.
Are you guys gonna turn it into like the office or whatever, like to show them like how many people are against it or not?
That would be a really great idea. I feel like if we can come to some kind of, yeah, we might vote, come to some kind of policy agreement where we say, yes, we think that we should say the pledge, but only on this day. Or no, we don't think that we should say the pledge, and this is why. I think that would be really cool to come up with as a class.
In fact, how do laws get passed in the United States?
Votes.
Votes?
Well,
So who actually comes up with the laws?
No, it's usually Congress.
Senators
And they
and
vote on it.
congressmen,
Yeah.
right? But how do they know what their voting constituency is? And what's that called when a group of citizens gets together? How do you indicate that you're behind a policy? Everybody, have you ever been asked to sign something?
Oh, yeah,
What's that called when you sign something that starts with P?
yeah, I know.
Petition,
Yeah.
right? And then your congressman drafts a law that he feels represents the majority of his constituents, and that's what they take to Congress, right? So, I think we can already put up some things that you guys are establishing right here, right? Rule by law, we kind of respect that in the US of A. Like, we probably would be upset if we got fired because we didn't have a picture of, George Bush on our desk,
Yeah, that's different.
right? As opposed to when Saddam Hussein was in power in Iraq. You didn't have a picture of his somewhere in your business or on your desk, you could be fired, right? So yeah, why do you think his image is all over like walls and buildings and, yeah, you're a traitor to the state if you don't revere him, right? So this idea of rule by law, that laws should be what? In what way? Someone said it, starts with V.
votable?
Vote, yeah. And when these laws are instituted from the bottom up by the people, not by the leaders, right? When the leader is religious and makes the law, it's called a theocracy. So what do you value if the laws come from the people? It actually comes from this Greek word meaning, I'll mean that, the people.
Why it work on everything?
All right, in about 1 minute, I would love for you to flip over your paper and start that quick write. So finish up your reading.
Has someone ever told you that before? That demos is just Greek for people? That's what the word democracy? Who's heard of that before?
I knew it was Latin, yeah.
Yeah, they're teaching me some good stuff here.
keep going then. You're right for 5 minutes straight. Are we kind of good? Keep going. I know, you've written a lot. Thank you. Thanks for working on it. It's right important. Thank you. All right, so, Charles, how are you doing? Yeah, keep going. This is a quick write, so anything that comes to your mind. Okay, keep your hand going. It's gonna help you keep races. Write about it. Why don't you care? What do you think? If you guys get stuck, think about what someone who would oppose you would say. What would their argument be? Let's say, yeah, I believe students should say the pledge, and here's why, and then say you list out all your reasons. If you get stuck at that point, maybe think about what someone would say if they disagree with you, and say, you might disagree with me based on this and this and this, but here's my counter argument to you. Got about 3 more minutes. Keep writing. John, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm just about to.
Okay, cool. How you doing? Awesome. Guys. How you doing, James? Keep going. What would people who disagree with you, what would they come back at you and say? You already talked about it? Maybe go through in your mind and think about the words to the Pledge of Allegiance, and think about some of the values that you can take out from the pledge, like why people might say it, what the values are. Is that helpful? Okay, cool. Alright. 1.5 minutes left. Those hands going. You guys are doing so great. Thank you so much for working so hard. Think about the pledge. Think about some of the values that you think about when you say the pledge, and why people might disagree with those values that you hold. How you doing? So what do you think it's true. So what would those people say? How would they come back to you? Hey, I'm gonna do it. Think about what people might say in that position.
It's a Pledge of Allegiance that we all know, but in a language that
Charles, you get what we're talking about in terms of like relationship here between value and policy?
You're talking to me?
Do you get it? Or are you still kind of foggy?
Oh, I got it.
You got it?
I'm doing fine.
Right? Like, how can you tell I believe in this desk?
Because you should.
I'm putting my weight on it, right? What's the ultimate code of being a teenager?
Nothing's real.
You never, ever, ever do what? Okay, that's right. Come on, think about being a teenager. The ultimate crime you commit as a teenager.
Having a baby.
I'm not talking about like real crimes. I'm talking about like an offense against another teenager.
Oh,
Bullying. Stealing their girlfriend.
Bullying, fighting. What about snitching?
No, that counts as a lot.
That's not too bad nowadays.
Yeah, but it depends on how you look at it, because like, when it's like something bad.
Some
Do you remember when you guys were in middle school? What was the phrase? Snitches get
Stitches and end up in ditches. And get bit.
right? Did you ever tell on a friend
Yup.
in middle school?
Yeah.
I mean, were you ever supposed to tell on a friend? That was like the ultimate, oh my god, she told on us. Oh my god, she is like so out of the group. Oh my god.
I tell
Right?
people all the time.
Like,
They shouldn't
wow.
be doing bad things.
Okay. So what did you value instead of
I was
loyalty?
kidding, I was kidding.
Right? But here's the question, Charles, because that's the same question. What is it that preteens and teenagers kind of value more than anything else?
Friendship.
Friendship, loyalty and friendship. Isn't half the drama of high school about betrayal?
Oh my God.
I
I don't know, I
trusted
try to stay
you
away from that.
and you betrayed my trust, right? So who do you trust, and figuring out who to trust
You trust
is like
no one.
one of the chief goals of like socializing when you're a teenager. And it has everything to do with the kind of adult friendships and relationships that you make. You're learning who to trust, which is why betrayal, why loyalty, correct, is so important. Loyalty. Do you understand why gangs then, who lean on that idea of loyalty, kind of target teenagers? Because if you can get someone loyal when they're in middle school or a teenager, there's a reason why gangs don't target 25-year-olds. Because by the time you're 25, your brain has kind of made a flip. And now instead of being a narc or a snitch, you're a whistleblower. You're turning in a criminal, right? You're being a citizen advocate. There's even Tom Martino, right, who makes a whole business out of advertising other businesses that screw their customers. Being a whistleblower, right? Trying to let people know, don't trust that person, they're gonna rip you off. Here's your sign, don't trust that person, right? So what have adults come to value more than loyalty? Truth,
Honesty.
honesty. What about,
But
like, how
compassion?
many of you have already been in like a situation where you thought someone might do something where they might get hurt?
Oh.
And even though they might get in trouble, you're like, it's time to say something. In the interest of safety, right?
Your compassion.
Right, right. So we've come to value safety over loyalty. Remember even in To Kill a Mockingbird, Jem breaks, they call it the last bastion of childhood, and tells on Dill, he tells Atticus that Dill ran away and he's under the bed. Right, because he knows that his family is going to be concerned. Remember when Dill runs away? And
We didn't read the Mockingbird.
His
Never read it.
teacher then.
Yeah, we never read it.
No, I know, but then we didn't read it, I swear. I'm being honest.
No, we read
No, we
the,
have-
you read the first one to us, that was it.
To Kill a Mockingbird?
No, you didn't read that, yeah.
Yeah, I never read that too. I know, I was.
You talked about it.
Yeah, you talked about it to us.
So if you guys are done with your writing, I would love for you to actually partner up at this point and share what you came up with.
Wait,
Find a partner.
Because you look right
I
at
did
me.
not like that. I came up with no idea. I don't want to be part of it.
Okay, I don't care about it.
I don't want to be part of it.
Do you guys need partners? Or do you want to join me?
Yeah, I'm going to
Okay. All right, partner up. Share what you.
I basically said the same thing except for it's like
Like someone big and others would just show it interferes with my words.
maybe like the
There's ways to start out. Honestly, if there's a big that you can only track the student in elementary, I got in trouble. Well, yeah, I just did that.
Yeah, they get mad.
Yeah, she just did that, I was all, why
I have
did
to
you do that?
double
She's
check
like,
him and I ended up moving them because I was like, oh, is he a friend? How are you doing? I said something.
Maybe she doesn't even know who.
I believe in a lot of it.
she's like, oh, yes.
No, I don't have that. And I'm not an atheist, but I believe in a lot of these things. But I wouldn't consider myself globally Christian.
We're gonna list them on the board.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Right, how are you guys doing? Right, when you look at what each of you wrote, try and pull out like the values behind your reasoning. So what did you write?
I do.
Like, I used to.
Steph?
I don't have a problem with it, it's just, I feel like if you're gonna worship something, you don't have to be.
So what
Like, if
values?
you're gonna worship something, worship like wherever you are, whatever.
So make some notes.
That's how my dad is, my mom is.
We're gonna list
My
them.
mom's atheist, so my dad and I are going to church.
I don't feel good.
All right, who's the partner group here? Okay, someone read for me just something that you wrote down. Sierra, so you're right. No? Oh my gosh, you guys are both great, they both have good views. Thank you, what'd you write? Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, we did.
We just did this.
Yeah, we already did.
That's some
Yeah,
really
you just,
interesting
we had a whole
thing there.
conversation.
From what you just wrote, what are some of the values that you can pull out of here?
Yeah, I went over to
And they have like pretty much the same things like we should. They're like, you should have a opinion.
Freedom of what? No control. So, what, just in regards to, if you're speaking the pledge, what would that be? Freedom of what? Freedom of speech. All right, Sarah, what's something that you wrote down? Yeah, just one thing. Something that you
Because I mean, I
wrote
would win all these conversations, but then she's like, no, you didn't. And then I'm over here like, I did. But she said I was wrong. What?
So what value would that be?
Say something.
Freedom of what? Freedom of belief, freedom of religion. What about you, Alana? What's something that you wrote down?
She was all giving me that look. I was like, I don't like that.
You wrote it
She was
down.
like staring into my soul.
No, she's right.
No.
Oh, no.
I don't hate it. This is Paul McClung.
I think she would. Honestly, I should write that. But I thought it was out of strict writing.
All of
I gave her fruit actually.
And it was
So what would your value be? If you want people to feel like the pledge is a way to give them a sense of purpose, then what would your value be there?
Okay, so what do you value?
That's all you can do.
It doesn't have to be like a freedom,
Isn't it? So you're like, no. It's a terrible sentence. Because then there's gonna be that awkward where
just allow them.
I think that's like
Those eight to have
yeah.
right after.
But no, yesterday really bad. Like I had to stop.
Is it
Okay, see, this is what was happening. I had to stop. I had to stop.
So do you think that should play it at all? Like, let's say Scout Sound every Monday. Do you think that they should do that at all?
Yeah, remember religion, choose the religion that under God.
Ahead of what?
Yeah, right.
It's like saying I'm a horse. I really don't understand. No, it's not.
You start to talk about it in the beginning, but you got the right to
What's it called in the US? Really want to show your pride, your national love, your important. It starts with a P. It's not a common word.
Now it's like, what?
Think of that value to
The golfing.
So write down some of these values that we talked about, because we're gonna put them on the board as a class.
You already got the.
They call that, the little shell pad. All right. As you guys close up your conversations with your partners, go ahead and write down some of those values that come from your discussion about the Pledge of Allegiance. And then we're gonna write them on the board together.
Some people don't care.
I put speech guns in rights.
If you say guns, what would the value
And hunting.
be? So hunting, if you believe in everybody's ability to be able to go hunting, what would the value be behind it?
Some people make nothing by hunting.
Okay, so,
In England, that's not a value. In fact, even the police are supposed to be
I know.
and you have to go outside the country. Right? So why was America different from England in terms of which amendment to the Constitution took the right to bear arms?
My dog.
Right?
The reason that was because they knew that would become corrupt. One day.
Who was
I got my 67 She gets number 3. She's my baby. And my mom said, your dog's getting cold. No, she's not.
the Constitution.
Dude, everybody says that. Everybody says that.
I don't want to
Right?
know.
So great Britain
Yeah.
Honestly, I would still look at that behind. Let's use it.
so what would the freedom be? What would the value be?
Find out that you actually do
What are the conversations you guys wrote down?
The government wasn't the British government in America.
I don't want to get Cameron to beat me up.
Dude, I've been trying to learn this.
That's where they tried it.
Like in a fight.
I can put Brandon with my dad.
You probably could.
And with my good legs. Ah.
Right?
You probably could right now. My arm is like out.
What are some of the values that kind of were on that?
That's what my That's what Bailey did to my
Yeah, like why wouldn't George find it?
Yeah, she's like, they should try it. She told me, she's like, they should translate it for more
They knew that the government didn't set up.
He said he's beautiful.
And that we one day he voted against.
They all do.
It looks like
Staff that
People who, you're just gonna learn.
He's just like-
have reasons for wanting to.
So it's like he puts it there for dandruff, and when it comes down,
Everybody's like, is he smelling his dandruff?
Teenagers have that mindset, like why would we see teenagers care about pledging allegiance to their country?
What time are we at? 10:15?
Yeah.
What are some of the values that you guys have?
So they care more about their communities and their government.
Okay, so how does that apply to us?
Remember the wolves? So that's a value. Versus caring about value, right? So you're saying you don't care about another people, you value
So
how
in your mind, the word God is important. Like the word God kind of means what?
She said that she looked up on this.
What did they fill on?
That's like the
And then the
jungle
great,
book.
and then the wolf.
It's a great
It's like the
word.
movie The Jungle Book.
Yeah.
All right, guys, wrap up your conversation.
Give me a few hours.
Right.
Was probably like,
Right. If I can have your attention toward the front. Who would be willing?
Like to share his ideas.
All right. Before Todd shares though, I was hoping maybe, since you guys are up for it, we could actually review the words in the Pledge of Allegiance. I know Alana has them written out.
I can say
Would you
it.
mind leading us in the pledge?
I've lived it.
That way we can just be refreshed, like some of the wording, some of the values that we can kind of pick out from the pledge. You don't have to say it, I believe that people have different beliefs, from freedom of speech, freedom of religion, so you don't say it if you don't want to, but this is mostly just to get you guys familiar with what's actually in the pledge. Would you mind leading it for us? We'll all sit together?
Which?
That's fine, that's fine.
Hey, does anyone else remember what you used to do when you were little?
I know the beginning.
Oh, what's this? What is this?
Your
it's the
hand
heart.
across your heart.
Putting your hand over your heart? Right, why? What does this even signify? Swearing? Like a deep oath or
like,
pledge?
yeah, I was gonna say that.
Anyone ever say, even if you don't believe in God, which is kind of weird, I swear to God? Anyone say that? Like, and when you take an oath in court to tell the truth, a lot of states you still
I
put
say
your
the
hands
truth.
on what?
The Bible.
The Bible. Right. So, like, did anyone ever swear on their mother? I swear on the life of my mother, right? Which is always kind of weird, you know? Like, so this idea that you're swearing on something important to you, which means I swear on my own what? Your heart is symbolic for your what?
Soul.
Isn't life itself a value?
Sure, to some people.
Some people,
Not really.
Do you have to wait for someone to kill you before you defend yourself in Colorado?
Not really.
No.
No.
No. You have the right to protect your own life. You have the right to life. So if a hospital just decides it's too expensive to take care of you, can they pull the plug?
Yup. No, you have to have a family member, right?
And
You can pull the plug.
if
Right.
you
I'll
cannot
pull
do it yourself, then yeah, somebody in your family should
Just like pull out the
do
IV.
it.
Who needs this?
Yeah, Shane.
So I went to Texas and they had this outside court because this guy like did some really bad things. So I think his punishment was the heat. But anyways, they like had like a Bible and his hand had to stay on it. So he like lies a lot, so he had to put his hand on the Bible the whole time.
You had to testify in continuous touching of the Bible?
No, his hand just
I'm
had to
not
stay
surprised
there.
that this would happen in a state where it's hot a lot. Somehow that does not surprise me. Does anyone else want to stand? I do. I kind of, like, it warms the little cockles of my heart when I do this.
What's
Like,
the cockles?
when we have
Yeah, left hand.
little valves, like cockles or
I
little
think we should all
bivalves
stand up there with
with
you.
shells.
I think we should do it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do this.
Oh my
I don't know
God.
the word.
Alright,
All right.
Peer pressure, look at that.
Let's get up there, guys.
I'm not saying word.
I don't know. I got no problem with this. I love my country. Anyone sing the national anthem when people sing it? You kind of sing along?
Oh, I think it all the time.
Except I don't
I
sing it, because I can't sing.
Okay. You guys ready? Ready, Alana?
Ready, Alana?
Flag.
Oh, you got it. Sure. What does standing signify?
Respect.
That you're not
Respect. Yeah.
Right? Would respect be a value?
Yes.
Can we value respect?
All right, you guys ready? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
there
when
we
we say
go.
it, just think about some of the words, think about some of the values that are instilled in the pledge itself.
Alvin, you cannot pledge allegiance to the girls' tennis team. That's not on the table right now.
Okay.
All right? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Isn't that like a song?
Play ball.
Play ball.
Isn't that like a song?
Oh, yeah,
We're not
yeah.
playing with balls.
Wouldn't it be,
No, that would be baseball.
wouldn't it be most respectful to
But
say
we're
the
not
flag
playing baseball.
We should.
or something like that? Well,
I called
that's
for that.
Piggy bank.
So, when you
And they
guys
play the national anthem?
Yeah.
Like the music kind of.
When you guys just read or heard that pledge or said it, what are some of those words that stick out as values, as civic values?
Beauty.
Justice for all.
Justice,
Justice.
indivisible,
So what's another word for indivisible?
Under God.
dividable.
Yeah, like unity, right?
Yeah.
Like unified.
Nudity.
Is this more liberty to, or is this liberty from?
Liberty from
Liberty from what?
God.
Jesus.
From America.
Well, this was, like, the Pledge of Allegiance was to America, but what was the ideal of America in opposition to?
Freedom.
How many of you guys have, like, pledged, I will always do something because it's in opposition to something that your parents do? Right, so who, if this was liberty from, who is America claiming liberty from?
The British.
Tyrannical government.
Right? Yeah.
Empire.
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 Monarchy.
Right? The British Empire at one point owned 3/4 of the known world, of the populated world. All right? So this idea, really? So this idea of liberty means freedom from an empire. Can you name me a country or a state that Spain still owns? Spain owns Africa?
Rhode Island.
That's the
Spain owns Rhode Island?
I was trying to think.
Colorado.
New Mexico.
Spain owns Spain.
Spain owns
Spain owns New
Italy.
Mexico?
France.
Italy.
Arizona.
New Mexico.
Why did we get into a war with Canada at one point? Why were
Because we wanted to.
Canada used to be owned by
French.
France,
Those French.
Wait, what?
right? Just like certain places in Mexico used to be owned by
Spain.
Spain. And this process was called colonization.
Yeah, I know.
And America was once a colony of
Britain.
Great Britain.
Canada.
So this idea of liberty, Great Britain is ruled by a
Monarchy.
monarchy,
Uh,
which you're born into.
Yeah.
you should put religion too.
Do people in Great Britain vote?
No.
Sure.
To
No.
get to.
Because they have the queen, right? Because the
Queen,
or king,
queen.
and they're already
Dutch.
Different
out.
system, right?
Duchess,
Sure.
Different system,
Or due to the family.
Well, of course.
yeah.
aristocracy, right? Way different system. Do you remember what the first Greek vote was?
Sure.
It was by citizens of Greece, so of course slaves and women didn't get to vote. But every Greek citizen, which meant landowner, either picked a white stone or a black stone and put it in a
War
basket
with
You were
Persia.
telling us
to
about
go to
that.
war with Persia. And this was the first vote, and that was the birth of democracy. So you start to think about types of government, and American democracy was really founded on those Greek values, that the people had a right to make a choice in their government, as opposed
The
to,
Greeks, the
yeah.
Romans.
And what would have happened if Persia had won?
No, we would've
There
been
would be no
screwed.
Greece, there would be no Rome.
We'd still be living in an empire, because the Persians had empire and ruled by a king, right? Yeah.
Mr. Murray said that if Greece wouldn't have fallen, then we would be like more technologically advanced or something like that. Like, is that true?
Possibly, the decline of Greece, one of the horrible things that happened at the end of the decline of Greece was the burning of the library in Alexandria. And a lot of technology, mathematics, astronomy, architectural knowledge was really lost.
Yeah,
So
so
we
we
may
wouldn't
well
have a
be,
big setback,
yeah,
pretty much.
yeah. Remember they called it the Dark Ages for a reason.
Yeah, because they were all stupid.
Yeah, good.
Right, other values, I heard you say
Religion.
one, religion.
Yep, we
So
don't
how
really-
does that play into the Pledge of Allegiance?
Under
Why-
God.
Under God.
Yeah.
So do you think if we just took out that phrase, we should require students to say the pledge?
No,
It's part
It's a choice.
it's part of the freedom of speech. When it was created, it was put in there for a reason.
yeah.
This country was built off of religion.
Would
Yeah,
it be,
we built-
would it be
a lot of
okay
the
to
stuff
force
was based
kids
on
to
the Bible.
say the pledge if we took out the phrase under God? Because that's what happened here in Colorado in 2002.
Okay, you know what?
No.
If we took out a part of the Pledge of Allegiance, I wouldn't say it.
Yeah, it's not the Pledge of Allegiance.
We just said one nation, indivisible with liberty and justice for all.
It
Sounds
doesn't
good.
make sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't
We're not
work.
one
It's not
nation,
original.
indivisible.
You should say my name then.
Well, under God is like saying every person's still one. Every person's not original.
Charles, I
One
should.
nation under
What's that?
Charles.
It's not original.
It's not original.
You can change it.
Okay, okay.
I
It's not the
mean-
original version.
We,
Put it in there for a
this
reason.
country was built off of religion and we need to stand by it.
Yeah,
Oh, so one of the things that we value is tradition?
yeah.
Well, sure.
When I
That's why we
become
still
president,
celebrate
we're gonna make it
Christmas
Charles.
and Easter.
I think that.
Carla, what do you think, what's another value from the
Yeah,
pledge? Think about that last line.
Vegetarian.
One nation, liberty, justice for all. What are some more
They don't know what.
ideas? Freedom of speech.
We need to be able to
Hey, Todd?
tell someone whether they're being stupid or not.
What about this one?
I'd be in jail if I didn't have that one.
Tradition.
Yeah, I would probably be leading a revolution.
Yeah, if there was no such thing as freedom of speech,
Yeah.
a lot of us would not be.
No.
Well, a lot of the
Wait,
nations.
elaborate on that.
Like,
What are you saying?
like I think after time, everybody would kill each other. Because
We
of,
didn't have freedom of speech? Why do you think that? Why is it so important?
Because we
because it
could.
gives you the freedom to speak whatever you want. Say what you want without harming another.
So you can say whatever you want?
Well, to a,
To
You can't like go up to an officer and like say a really mean thing, cause then you'll get arrested.
well, technically you
As
can,
long
but
as
it
you're
just
not
depends on
disturbing
if the cop is a teacher.
cannot disturb.
I heard that.
Because technically you can say whatever you want, you have freedom of speech, but until you go to the point of saying you're gonna harm them, then
And if they arrest you for
What's
it,
the
they just took
definition
away
of
your
assault?
rights.
physical.
Physical.
Threatening physical harm is assault. So if you tell somebody, I'm gonna kick your ass, or I'm gonna kill you,
Ooh, that's
right?
threat.
That's assault. You have threatened someone's right to believe in their physical safety. Batteries when you actually hit someone.
And isn't arson when you blow them up?
Well,
Fire.
Well,
set fire.
fire.
So do you
Yeah.
realize that you have the right to freedom of speech, so you can paint I love Smurfs on your van,
Heck yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You cannot paint the word bomb inside on your van and park it
Disturbing
in a
peace.
public park,
I'm gonna do
which
that.
someone did a couple years ago. It's a federal offense, you dumbass.
What?
Right? Because you threatened public safety. Do you know it is illegal to shout fire in a crowded building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might incite
Disturbing the peace.
panic and endanger public safety.
What if there's actually
And die.
Alexis,
That's what happens on Black Friday.
Alexis, did you have a response to Brianna? I saw you raising
That's why I hate Black Friday.
You forgot, okay.
About the freedom of speech.
About freedom of speech.
So do you have ultimate freedom of speech? What does the Constitution guarantee us?
Freedom of speech, the assembly.
There's
right,
a
there's
very
that one.
important word that goes in front of freedom of speech. You have what freedom of speech? Which means you don't have the freedom to make someone else concerned about their safety. And you don't have the freedom to incite violence. And they call that what kind of speech? Starts with H.
Freedom of speech.
What kind of speech incites other people to violence?
Yes.
admirable? Wait, no, never mind.
Charles.
I think I'm like par.
Have you guys ever heard the phrase hate speech?
Yes.
You ever seen that, what's that, something Baptist, Westboro Baptist Church?
Oh, yeah.
Faggots and gays need to go to hell.
Wow, that is messed up.
Wow. Even remember Ms. Montemayor got on some freshman a couple of days ago because he's running down the hall screaming the N-word?
Whoa,
What?
When was this?
Whoa. That's what she's saying, you don't get to do those things,
Dude,
right?
But it's
So-
not hard.
That some freshman went by and said that.
You know what it's part
And I
of?
said, what? And he freaked
This
out.
is what you are guaranteed.
He's like, oh, he's kidding.
You are guaranteed reasonable freedom of speech, and speech that incites violence, speech that threatens someone else's safety, which is why, even in this school, administration makes a difference with the F word, whether it's overheard in casual, friendly conversation, like, dude, that's fucked up. You know, you probably wouldn't get in trouble with administration for saying that. But if you address it as a threat, like F you in anger to another student or to a teacher, oh, there's gonna be some consequences. Right?
So,
Yeah.
the KKK says the N-word like all the time. And I mean, to some people,
They're not allowed to use that word in public protest anymore.
anymore.
Right.
Well, they
And
used
that's
to.
why Westboro Baptist is coming under fire, right? Because they claim freedom of speech laws. And,
You guys not
right,
hired?
and that's why there's a difference between certain state laws. Some states have made, like the N-word and the F-word, they've made those inflammatory, they've made those hate speech. So you're not allowed to use it. Do you see the difference? That's why law is so important. Because someone at some point said, hey, you know what? Yay freedom of speech. Because we can say that president is corrupt and not worry about getting killed, which didn't happen with Saddam Hussein. The first 4 guys that spoke up in his cabinet when he took over disappeared.
They died.
No one knows, they just disappeared. They were never seen from again.
Okay, they died.
Right? The next 10 people that objected to the fact that those 4 people disappeared, their
They
wives and
disappeared too.
daughters disappeared.
Are you serious?
Yes. He was a thug.
He was.
How come there's no black teachers?
Right. He was involved before he took over
Black teachers?
Parliament. He was involved in an attempted assassination of the previous head of state.
He was.
And it was a bungled assassination, and they ended up, some of their guys ended up shooting each other in crossfire.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Hey, Miss. Charles has a question.
Charles,
How come there's no black teachers there?
how come there's no
There's no
what?
African American teachers there?
I think that's a really interesting
Yeah,
question.
no, because we were just wondering.
Maybe they don't.
Now, I do know, because I've been involved in a lot of like the hiring,
Yeah.
and we've expressed that as a concern, that we need to hire minority teachers.
Yeah, there's
Sometimes
no Mexican
you can
teachers either.
only,
Yeah, there is.
and there is
Oh, wait, yeah, there is.
Fuentes,
I'm
the
sorry.
Spontaneous,
Okay, we
right?
Yeah.
Right, but Charles, we just haven't had candidates apply. And if
That's-
candidates
yeah.
have applied that have been of, some other race or ethnicity, and they haven't been fired, it's because of their qualifications and experience, not because of their skin color.
I should-
So there used to be laws, what was that law called, that, it was kind of like a quota system, and it said companies have to hire a certain amount of racial minorities, whether they're qualified or not.
That makes sense, that makes sense.
It was a quota system all the way up through like the 80s and the early 90s, and then people kind of just passed basic non-discrimination laws.
But I think it's interesting that you brought that up. If you value diversity, if you value other people's cultures, you value learning about people that are, who speak other languages than you, what would that value be? What's a word that covers that entire value? If you value learning about people from other cultures, people that speak different languages, diversity, and another word for diversity.
What have you guys been told? America is a what?
Diversity
It's a melting pot.
I heard that.
So if you value diversity, you value multiple, what?
Religions, races.
You value people from different
Diversity.
cultures. So what's that called? What culturalism?
I don't know.
And it's one of the things that changes our policy in Colorado in terms of what books and stories and poems we select to have you read, because it used to be a bunch of dead white guys from Europe. And now we read Cisneros and we read James Baldwin, who's a black author from the 1960s.
Oh, yeah, Cisneros. Is that like Mr. Cisneros?
No.
I'm just asking, like.
Oh my God. Right? What's that called? What culturalism? Starts with M. Multiculturalism.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any other values from the pledge, from your conversations with your partners that you want to put on the board?
Todd had some, like I said earlier.
Wait, what?
Honoring the fallen warriors.
Okay, so military?
Honoring those that have died to protect us.
We don't get out.
And those died.
All right. Great job, guys. So I think now.
Hey, what do we call that? What do we call that word? Someone who's willing to die for their country. We call them a what? Starts with P.
A hero.
A patriot. So what's that value called when you put your hand on your heart and you basically say, I am willing to die for my country if I should be called up? Patriotism.
I'm sacrificing.
Good.
All right, pass your papers forward.
Wait, do you want our names on
I
here?
do want your names on that.
Here.
Charles all hands it back.
This is a gift from me.
Penny, I'll go.
Watch us all.
All right, then we're going to be getting participation points for awesome job. Awesome job, guys. Awesome job. All right. All right, guys. Do you have your names on that?
Is it on?
No, there's on the back. Okay.
They're pretty cool. But they don't spin.
Thank you so much, guys. Great job.
Man, what time did we get out of this class? Give us
10:55.
God,
Like 10:20.
God, I mean, I love this class so
In other
much.
words, he doesn't.
Why? Can someone tell me why freedom of being able to choose your own religion is part of American value system?
Because everybody.
Because we don't, because,
Yeah, but how did we get there?
Supposedly we don't judge.
With war.
Yeah, but how did we get there?
because England's established religion was Catholicism.
Catholicism.
Yeah.
And then when the king changed and decided he wanted a divorce, Charles,
Yeah.
then what did he change to?
Religious.
Religion. He
What
changed,
religion did he change
to Christian.
England to?
Ormond?
Pay attention.
There's 9
There's not
We have more.
That's fine.
Catholic, right? He changed it to Catholic?
Remember we talked about one of the reasons that we like the right to bear arms is that in Britain they don't have the right, no one has the right to have guns. In fact, the cops don't have guns in
Don't
England.
they just like beat people with paddles?
They have billy sticks.
Yeah.
So the British,
Not even
Um,
tasers.
what's that Olympic sport where you shoot like clays and targets?
Oh,
Ski. Yeah, so the British ski team, plus there's one where you ski and then shoot targets. They have to actually go to France to practice.
whatever.
It is not legal to own or discharge a firearm in Great Britain, all right? So why do we claim this right to bear arms in the United States? What was the big scruff?
So we can protect
Because
ourselves.
we were once a colony of Great Britain.
The soldiers were just coming into house.
Oh, okay. Plus, the colonists were kind of out in the wild. So they had this British redcoat military that was supposed to protect us. But when Dad's out chopping wood in the forest and, you know, he gets picked off by an angry Native American because he's cleared the hunting grounds, or a bear walks in, or a coyote is carrying off his kid, you know, the guy picks up a stick and he's like, screw this stick. No, he wants a blunderbuss. He wants to be able to fire a musket at that bear and kill that bear that's threatening the safety of his family. Plus, The redcoats, how did the redcoats start to violate the safety of the colonists?
They demanded free food, free housing,
Your free daughter?
yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they would just walk in and take your stuff
And leave.
and leave.
It's called pillaging.
And require that you house them. You know what, we're gonna sleep in your bed tonight, you find someplace else. Right, and then all of a sudden the British military